Okay, having said all of this, let's look at the problems with standardized objective tests and non-standardized projective tests. Okay, and how to improve them. First is the faking. We have to keep in mind very clear that whether for standardized projective tests and for non-standardized projective tests, they can all be faked. The results can all be faked. Whether or not they are intentionally faked, responses to inventories may not indicate the true interest of people or true intention of people. The inventories are less useful when it is advantageous to give false reports, which is more likely when the scores are used for educational or employment section practices or purposes. And virtually all self-report inventories are vulnerable to faking by various or for various reasons. We have to remember, this is not like a biological, physiological index like blood pressure or blood sugar level, or done by a mechanical equipment like a CBT, like CT, a mechanical instrument like CT or FMR. Through the physical method, through the mechanical method, there is no way you can fake the results, or very little chance you can fake the result. All psychological tests are vulnerable to faking. So I still remember my professor at the first class of statistics told us, we have to remember the student results, they could just randomly answer the questions. And they gave meaningless answers, and we gave meaningful analysis. How ridiculous that could be. And I want to think about those questions as well. So let's just look at, for instance, an extreme answer. Look at this. Introvert, outward, neurotic, emotionally stable, stubborn, agreeable, undependable, conscientious, prefer for the similar or open to experience. If the person, I can just choose all 5, no matter what. So, can you trust this? You won't, because it's extreme. There was also a social desirability effect. That's the tendency to respond to structure rather than to the content itself. Okay? It can result in inaccurate scores for the sake of social desirability. To give an example, let's still look at the big 5. Whatever the result is, I'm just going to take number 3, taking the midway approach, a moderation approach. Or whatever the scale, I showed you self-esteem, self-efficacy. Now, I could just fake to be a high self-esteemed or self-efficacy person, or I could fake to be low self-esteem, low self-efficacy person. I know which could probably mean what. If you study them carefully, you know what is the expected answer. The third factor is the socioeconomic status, and it could be significantly related to the responses. For example, working class may prefer monetary security rather than satisfying their own interest. And first, the ethic environment problems, example like the right to privacy and natural concerns over her own emotional stability and mental health should be respected. Whatever the test, besides privacy issues or problems, reliability and validity of personal assessment devices could pose problems as well. People have to keep in this mind. And also there was the interpretation reporting assessment data. Even when the most carefully structured and validated measures of personality tests are used, it is a cardinal, the most important rule, that the resulting interpretations should be viewed as hypotheses your guesses, your speculations as a way to be confirmed rather than this is the truth. And it has to be validated by behavioral observations and personal interviews. So having said all of this, I give you a perfect example of a faking. The Rosenheim experiment, okay? A perfect case of intentional faking in psychological testing. Rosenheim, okay? He died in 2012, about 10 years ago. You better know about this person because he published a report in 1973, which is about 50 years ago. And the experiment arranged 8 people with no history of psychopathology to attempt admission into 12 psychiatric hospitals, all with the aim for the subsequent admission with diagnosis of schizophrenia or bipolar mood disorder. All 8 were described as being self-discharged within 7 to 50 days after having stated that they have accepted the diagnosis. You know how they get into hospital? They just tell them, I hear a voice, I feel bad, and they complete the form. And they just gave the worst answer, so they were kept in the hospital. So because there was no biological parameters or index to show whether the person is sick or not, we can only trust what you say, your mouth value. I trust you. And then that is not, it is verbally true, but it's not biologically true or medically true for the person. So when he released the result, the medical world was shocked and speechless because it's very easy for them to make a gross mistake in diagnosing the patient based on just what you describe. The study concluding that excluding forms diagnoses were grossly inaccurate in distinguishing individuals without mental disorder from those with mental disorders. And that is a conclusion that resulted in explosion of controversy. The Rosenheim experiment addressed the relation between psychiatric and mental diagnosis and the labeling theory, theorizing that the deviance is a result of external judgments rather than scientifically based judgments or labels that could modify the individual's self-identity and change the way others respond to the labeled person. So by negatively labeling those seen as deviant from standard cultural norms, the behavior of individuals may be adjusted to coincide with the terms used to describe them. So it's the label or labeling that matters rather than the real situation that matters. So what does this experiment really matters? You can fake being a patient as much as you can get into a hospital by telling the wrong story. Admitted into the hospital, you can get out by telling the wrong story, as well as you know how to fool the doctor. And this is what Rosenheim said himself. I told friends, I told my family, I can get out when I can get out. That's all. I'll be there for a couple of days, then I get out. Nobody knew I'll be there for 2 months. The only way out was to point out that they are correct. And they said I was insane. I am insane, but I'm getting better. That was an affirmation of their view of me. And this is how Rosenheim concluded his experiment. What do you have to say now? Keep this question in mind, and that is all for this lecture. Thank you.